Hi all, Hipper here. Today we are looking at tier 7 cruisers and we're gonna rank them by difficulty. And I'll go from like easy to hard, but I'll get into the details here. So this is the scale here, and I've totally stolen that from Wolfenstein. And of course, Can I Play Daddy, the green one, is the easiest, and all the way up to Uber, which is obviously the hardest. So I'll go through the tier 7 cruisers one by one, and then I'll add them into the category where I think they fit the best. So of course it means that if you're new to the game and new to tier 7 cruisers, then one of the cruisers in the Can I Play Daddy category is obviously the easiest ones to get started with. And you should probably wait with the Uber ones until you are more experienced. So we'll start with the first cruiser here, and that is the Kutuzov. And it's a premium cruiser, of course, and it has smoke, and it has insane range, and it has a great fire starting ability, and like you don't have to play this ship very aggressively, which makes it very easy. It's also a lot of green on the armor view here, meaning that overpens will be quite easy to get in case you make a mistake in this ship here. So yeah, it's definitely in the Can I Play Daddy category. So next up is the Wichita, and that's another premium tier 7 cruiser that is just like a bit too easy to play in my opinion. And with Wichita you also get the added benefit of having a radar, which can really help you out in those tight spots. And the armor is quite good. It's supposed to be easier to pen this ship here, but it seems to be just as annoying to shoot at with AP as Cleveland is. So yeah, definitely another Can I Play Daddy ship here. So next up we have the Siegfried, and this is pretty much a battleship in disguise anyway. It has battleship guns and almost battleship armor, so it's a good ship to use as a transition from battleships to cruisers. But a transition only because it's not like, it doesn't play like most other cruisers. Yeah, it's quite an easy ship to play. Just point and shoot, basically, just like the others in this category here. You do need to watch that green bow and stern, but that is the only thing that you have to give any thought to in this ship. So what we have here is definitely, without a doubt, another Can I Play Daddy ship. Next up is the Ochakov, and that is another premium tier 7 cruiser that was available in the game a while ago. And it has a radar, and it has great torps, and it has a very fast reload, and it has lots of guns, and it's very fast and it's very agile, and it's so easy to overpen with all of that green armor there. So it doesn't punish mistakes, and it's just a silly ship really. And yes, it definitely belongs in Can I Play Daddy. So up next we've got the worst offender of them all, and this is a ship I hardly ever play because I think it's just ridiculous. And I'm sure you've guessed what it is, because it is obviously the American tier 7 cruiser Cleveland. And this shares all the traits of Ochakov except for torpedoes, but it's just ridiculous. It has 12 6-second reload guns and like a fire chance that's crazy, and all you have to do is angle in this ship and you can get away with anything. So this ship is an HE spammer that gives tier 7 cruisers a bad name, and I despise this ship and I don't play it at all. So it's definitely in the Can I Play Daddy category. Oops, wrong picture there, but you get the point. And we'll leave it pink just to underline how ridiculous this ship is and what a crutch it is. I don't think it should be in the game, and yeah, like I said before, I really don't like that ship. It teaches players like stuff they can't get away with in other cruisers, and it's just ridiculous. Okay, I think that's enough Cleveland bashing for now. So we'll move on to the Don't Hurt Me category. And that's of course not the easiest cruisers to play, but they are still quite easy. And the first one is Mogami. And this is another HE spammer, and I mean, the more reliable, the more relying a cruiser is on HE, the easier it is to play. Such is life. And Mogami has great torps as well, and in Mogami nobody's really expecting you to chase down destroyers or go capping right off the bat. So it's a very easy ship to play and stay out of trouble in, basically. Okay, so next up is the Chapayev, and yeah, it's not as powerful as it once was, or as easy to play as it once was when it had a better bow armor, but it's still a ridiculous ship and requires very little effort to do well in. So it's definitely a don't hurt me ship. Okay, and the next ship up is the Baltimore. And the only reason it's not in the Can I Play Daddy category is that it's not as relying on HE as Cleveland is. But other than that, they're pretty much not the same, but they're very, very similar. And they are quite easy to play because you don't have a lot of buttons to push. I mean, these are ships that rely on their guns. And again, you have a radar in case you, well, mess up basically and have to face a hidden destroyer. So yeah, again, a don't hurt me ship for sure. And next up is the Suzuya, and that is again another HE spammer with a quite a limited repertoire of tricks up its sleeve. So again, you don't have to be too creative when playing this ship here. So definitely a don't hurt me ship. Alright, so that brings us to the next category, the Bring 'em On ships. And this is where the ships start to be more challenging to play and a little bit more niche ships. And another thing you'll notice is that you don't really see many ships from here on in the game. It's mostly the green ones that people choose to play, or for obvious reasons. So the first Bring 'em On ship is the Charles Martel here, and it's of course equipped with an engine boost and a heel and sonar, and that's about it. You also have torpedoes, and you are very, very squishy. So it's a challenging ship to play, especially if you're facing legendary battleships or anything like that. It's also a lot of fun to play, and it's a ship that you don't see very often in the game. It's also very versatile. You can set it up with pretty much any build, and it'll do well, unless you get Deathstruck, of course. Okay, so up next is the Edinburgh, and there's an important distinction to make here between like an Edinburgh that is using a smoke build and an Edinburgh that's using a radar build. Now in this category here we have the smoke build Edinburgh, because although this ship doesn't have HE, the smoke will allow you to play this ship quite easily. You'll get away with stuff, and you can contest caps, and if everything gets too much you can smoke up and disappear. So this is like an intermediary ship, and it belongs in the Bring 'em On category. So next up is the Tier 7 Premium Cruiser Atago, and although it's very similar to Mogami and Suzuya, it has almost double the reload, and an Atago is expected to play more aggressively than a Mogami or a Suzuya, and therefore that ups the difficulty quite a bit. So this is a Bring 'em On ship. Alright, next up is another Tier 7 Premium, and it is the Prince Eugen. And this ship here has 8km torpedoes. It's quite tanky, but it still relies mostly on AP damage, meaning that you cannot rely on HE alone. It also have access to the main battery reload booster, making it a little bit easier to get damage in the ship here. So it's definitely not an easy ship, but also not a hard ship. It's one of the more difficult ones in the Bring 'em On category, but nowhere near the same as Hibber is. So speaking of Hibber, that is the first ship in the Death Incarnate category, and that is basically because it doesn't have the long range torpedoes of Prince Eugen. They are only 6 kilometers, and what Hibber has that you can use in battle is basically its terrific sonar and its turtleback. And all those things combined means that you have to be close to the action in this ship to be of any use. And I mean, the closer you are to the action, the more dangerous it is and the more difficult it is. And the fact that the HE is below par on this ship here also means that you cannot rely on setting fires on ships for damage. You will need to use AP, and you will need to set up broadsides, and you will need to play this ship well to do well in it, basically. So it's not a beginner ship for sure, and it's one of the more difficult ships to do well in the game. Alright, up next is the Amalfi, and this is a quite difficult ship to play that you won't get much out of, in my opinion. The reload is very, very long, and you don't have a sonar. Instead you have rolling smoke, which you can use for some things, and for some things it's useless. So it's very hard to support your team efficiently in this ship here, which makes it quite hard to play. And it's also hard to rack in damage, because you have that slow reload and like an average fire chance, and your torpedoes are very slow and you don't have a lot of them. You cannot rush battleships, for example, and take them out in one torpedo run like some other cruisers can. So it's a ship that requires thought and quite a bit of finesse. Okay, we are now getting into the Uber category, and the first ship is the Albemarle. And so many people hate this ship because it's squishy, and it is extremely squishy. If you don't like plan your moves and plan your angles, and if you don't plan anything in this ship, you will die. It does not allow any mistakes at all, and that's probably why it's not a very popular ship. I don't see it very often in the game, and like getting death struck in Albemarle, that happens, and it happens more than any other tier 7 cruiser. You have a radar on this ship here, but you don't really have the armor to play up front as other radar cruisers. So that makes it a very tricky ship to make full use of, and it requires very high level commanders to do well. And it does have reasonable torps, and you can single fire them, but it is one of the more, well, if not the most difficult tier 7 cruiser to do well in. So that's why it's definitely in the Uber category. So alongside Albemarle here in the Uber category, we have another British cruiser, and it is the Edinburgh, but this time with a radar build on it. Just like Albemarle, you are expected to make use of your radar in this ship, and you are expected to play it well and to kill destroyers. And you don't have HE, so you cannot pad your damage that way, unlike Albemarle, and that's why Albemarle is just below Edinburgh here. But Edinburgh does have better bow armor than Albemarle, but in reality you still get punished a lot in Edinburgh as well when you play it without smoke. So there's a reason that the British light cruiser line was withheld for a year and a half or something like that, and the British heavy cruiser line has just been released like a few months ago. And that's a recurring theme in this game here. The easier lines are released first, like the American and the Japanese. They're always the first. When the game came out, American and Japanese ships were available, and the first carriers that came out, they were, guess it, American and Japanese. And that is, like I said, just a theme. So that's my take on the difficulty of the different tier 7 cruisers. And before anyone mentions it, I'm just gonna say that Azuma is not in here because I don't like that ship, and if I don't put it in any of my videos, perhaps it'll disappear completely one day. And that'll be a good thing, because that is a horrible ship. So we won't mention it ever again. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and keep in mind that this is just my interpretation of the difficulty levels, and if you disagree, well, write it in the comments, and well, I hope you liked the video, and I'll see you out there.